WAMT. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Tonight, as the recession rocks New York, two experts will be here with advice on managing your finances. Get ready to call in. Also tonight, a long-planned city park to honor FDR gets a boost but needs more backers. Maybe it could be an Obama infrastructure project. Plus the meaning of manhood in the age of Barack.
In our community, in the black community, masculinity is associated with how many women you have, how many kids you have, how many times you've been in and out of prison, how much weight have you sold, and there's always a negative connotation when it relates to masculinity.
Black fathers considered later on, but first, here are this week's online video picks. Number one, from Bonfire of the Brands, instructions on how to be a good and obedient consumer at the holiday season and always.
You are an individual, but you are also a member of a global community. Most important of all, you are a consumer. As a member of this community, it is your duty to consume. Why? Because the system would collapse if you stopped spending, and the consequences would be awful. The system that runs your country relies on you being a good consumer. This film will show you how. The good consumer is always buying new products. When he is not buying, he is working hard, earning money so that he can fund future consumption. Remember, the golden rule of consumption is to concentrate on buying the things that you want as opposed to the things that you really need. And there are lots of organizations working hard to ensure your shopping list is full.
It's funny, that dark video is just a few weeks old, but it's already quaint, isn't it? In this economy, consumerism doesn't feel like a game anymore. Video pick number two. It's President-elect Obama himself from his weekly Saturday YouTube address. As he spoke about preventing foreclosures and helping cities, he snuck in the announcement of a New Yorker to be Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
We need to understand that the old ways of looking at our cities just won't do. That means promoting cities as the backbone of regional growth by not only solving the problems in our cities, but seizing the opportunities in our growing suburbs, exurbs, and metropolitan areas. No one knows this better than the outstanding public servant I am announcing today as our next Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Sean Donovan. As Commissioner of Housing Preservation and Development in New York City, Sean has led the effort to create the largest housing plan in the nation, helping hundreds of thousands of our citizens buy or rent their homes.
Interesting pick, because as housing commissioner here in New York, Sean Donovan somehow managed to please both developers and affordable housing advocates with an ambitious program built around market solutions. Maybe he can do it nationally. Does look like another pragmatic, post-ideology appointment by the president-elect. On to video pick number three from director Jesse Dillon, who made the Obama campaign's famous Yes We Can video, a call for scientists to see their work as public, not private.
Science Commons is a nonprofit project, and what we're trying to do is to make the web work for science the way that it works for culture.
What Science Commons can do is make research flow more easily. I mean, scientists are the ultimate remixers. They're taking information from multiple different sources and trying to analyze it and say, well, how does this all work together? So we want to get that data up in a commons on the web so other users can use it for new uses, new experiments, new insights, and still give people who want some control an ability to keep some of that control.
We're not trying to interfere with rightful ownership of compounds, drugs, devices, but even these companies are recognizing that the upstream basic research that led to these discoveries needs to be shared.
If we can systematically increase our chances of making big discoveries and decrease the likelihood that we're ignoring information that we should be using, then that's the best chance we have to get these breakthroughs and understanding about our bodies and about drugs.
Scientists, are you ready to share rather than patent? Video pick number 4 is from M. Belinky, posting on YouTube. It's 40 inspiring speeches condensed down to 2 minutes. Can you name all these movies?
I say to you, what every warrior has known since the beginning of time.
You've got to get mad.
I mean plumb mad dog mean.
If you would be free men, then you must fight to fulfill that promise. Let us
cut out their living guts
1 inch at a time.
And they will know what we can do.
Let no man forget how menacing we are. We are lions.
You're like a big bear, man.
This is your time. Seize the day. Never surrender.
Victory or death.
That's the Chicago.
Who's with me?
Clap! Clap! Don't let him die! Clap!
All right, let's fly.
And gentlemen in England, now our bed shall
No, my name is the Lord. When I tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take
Our Independence Day.
With Rocky at the end there and all those others, let's see how Barack Obama's inaugural address stacks up against all that loud inspiration, huh? And speaking of stacking up, the talent you are about to see on Video Pick 5 was standard fare on the Ed Sullivan Show 50 years ago. Today, it's outsourced to Bangladesh. That was shot in Khulna, Bangladesh, posted by Soviet Quake. And those are this week's online video picks. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. As the recession rocks the city, more and more New Yorkers are filing for bankruptcy or trying to avoid it. Now the City of New York, along with CUNY and the Daily News, are offering a one-week hotline for your questions about how to manage your lack of money. Questions about credit card and mortgage debt have been flooding in, and lots of others too. With us now are the leaders of that program to take some of your money questions here live on the air. You will see the phone number posted on your screen, 212-251-0801, 212-251-0801. Call us up right now. Jonathan Mintz is the New York City Consumer Affairs Commissioner. Kathy Mann runs the city's Office of Financial Empowerment. How's that for a great title? Hi, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Brian.
And what does the city's Office of Financial Management do?
Well, the Office of Financial Empowerment is it's a relatively new program. It's based at the Department of Consumer Affairs. It has a mission to educate, empower, and protect low-income New Yorkers and to help them make the best use of their financial resources.
Financial empowerment. I said financial management. Of course, it's empowerment. All right.
The shorthand version is just putting a bunch of bricks on your head and trying to help the public.
That's it. So it's can you do that?
I can't do that.
Can you walk the plank with people's credit cards? 50,000 credit cards.
It felt like that after a number of calls today. Yeah.
Which leads us to the first question that I'll ask you to kind of get the ball rolling here. And viewers, you can call in with your credit card questions, your mortgage debt questions, anything along these lines. 212-251-0801. This was in the Daily News today. They had some samples of your questions since the Daily News is a partner here. I owe more than $50,000 on my credit cards. I'm paying the minimum amounts due on some cards and just a bit more on others. How can I manage this better, Jonathan?
Well, pay them all off. Yeah, the simple answer. No. I think what's important in this question is a couple of things to be careful of, and it sounds like this particular person asking the question was. You never want to miss a payment. And if you do miss a payment, you want to immediately connect with your lender. You don't want to just let it go. That's very important. Don't let those problems go. Paying more than your minimum balance is also very smart because it means that you're actually whittling away at the principal, which is a good idea. What we urge people to do, and what we've been telling people again and again on the call line, is to try to winnow down your debt to a couple of cards where you have the lowest interest rate. A lot of people don't even know what the interest is they're paying on the money that they owe, and sometimes people have different interest rates within their same credit card, depending on how they got the credit. So it's very important to take a look. Where's the money? How much is it costing me to keep this debt? And how do I move all of that debt to the cheapest possible place?
And viewers, I'll bet you have credit card questions. Call up and ask your question about your debt. So many people I know are struggling with debt right now. Here are two people who can answer some of those questions. 212-251-0801. You can give us a call right now. When is it good to consolidate your credit card debt, and when is it good to not?
Well, I think the most important thing is looking at the interest rates and looking at the terms and conditions of the loans. There are a number of fantastic community-based, community development financial institutions out there that work with people on doing just exactly that, taking high-cost credit card debt and consolidating it into a low-cost single loan, closed-ended loan where you can be making regular payments and in installments and actually winnowing down that debt. You really want to make sure that you are moving, most importantly, you want to be moving from a variable rate loan into a fixed rate loan. As with everything, the variable rate loans and anything that's an open-ended line of credit often is subject to increased rates over periods of time. So you have to just be really careful that even though the introductory or teaser rate may sound really appealing, you have to make sure you're clear reading the fine print on how high that rate could ultimately go. If you consolidate down to what appears like a 0% loan for 3 months, but then skyrockets up to 28 or 36%, you could be in real trouble.
I know somebody who's trying to just keep rolling it over. So they'll take the offer that comes in the mail for the really low APR to consolidate.
Right.
And do that for the 6 months that rate is in effect, knowing that they're going to switch over to the next offer before it balloons up. Can people do that as long as they stay on top of it?
That sounds like a full-time job. I think in general that's not really great long-term planning. I think what people really want to do is settle with the right kind of credit that's going to work for them. I think ultimately you're never going to get to paying that off. You're never going to really be able to start to move forward and take on new debt that matters to you, like a mortgage or something, if you're playing fast and loose in that way.
Let's take a phone call. This is Paige in Manhattan, I believe. Hi, Paige. You're on the air.
Hello. I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I am 29 years old, and I recently did a credit report online. And I noticed that there was a credit card under my name that my mother had established for me when I was 17, just getting my credit started.
Wow.
And right now, the account is closed. It's got great ratings, but it's got like $10,000. And right now, I'm trying to buy a home with my husband, and they keep saying that there's too much debt in my name. Should I keep this or get rid of it?
Financially empower this woman.
Well, that is an excellent question, and it hits on just a number of things I want to highlight. The first is I love the fact that you went online and got, hopefully it was a free credit report, which you can get actually through www.annualcreditreport.com. A federal law made it easy for consumers to pull their credit from at least each of the 3 credit bureaus every year. That's a very interesting question about the open line of credit. Even though it's in good standing, believe it or not, that sometimes having several lines of credit open to you can adversely affect your credit score and adversely affect your credit report. It may appear that you appear to be riskier because the lender that you're going to for your mortgage or for a car loan or what have you is looking at all these other lines of credit you might be able to use and therefore put them at greater risk. So I think in a lot of ways it's about figuring out with the lenders what your best course of action is. Oftentimes, if it's not your only credit line, I would say, and if you're not currently using it, it probably would make sense to close that line of credit. I wouldn't want to tell you to definitely go out and do that. There may be other reasons you would want to keep it open, but I do think that there are the issue of your availability of debt or of credit versus your income. Sometimes it can be an adverse impact on your credit score.
Now, you referenced annualcreditreport.com, is it?
Yes.
Now, you know there are these ads, excuse me, all the time for freecreditreport.com, some of the other things. Are those good to use, or are those actually commercial enterprises that are going to hit you up in one way or another?
Those are commercial enterprises. There's a lot of, and the fact that they're able to, be calling themselves Free Credit Report is sort of a different story. But there is a single source that is, that you can go to get your free credit report according to federal legislation, and that is www.annualcreditreport.com.
Annualcreditreport.com.
And be careful of those free credit report websites because they can be charging you whatever they want.
I've also heard that just checking your credit score lowers your credit score. There's something about checking it that makes you be seen as higher risk.
Well, it sort of depends on how often how you're making the inquiries and how often you're making them. If you do the annualcreditreport.com and get your federally legislated allowable credit report, you can get it from each of the agencies once a year. So you can get up to 3 per year through that source. It does not affect your credit score, and it does not count as an inquiry. There are people who are regularly checking their credit report, and those can show up as inquiries. Now, once or twice, you want to get your score, because the annual credit report doesn't provide you with a score. If once or twice you're checking it, you want to see what your score is, you want to see how things are improving, I wouldn't worry so much. If you're doing it repeatedly, those are showing up as inquiries, and inquiries can sometimes negatively impact your score.
Let's take another call. Erica in Manhattan, you're on the air. Hi, Erica.
Hello.
Hello.
As I stated to the other gentleman, I come from another background, and I'm 73 years old, and I live in the same apartment for 38 years. And I sent my daughter to private school, and I worked all my life. And the credit card people have been after me, but I have never bought anything for which I had no money. And I think that in our society, people should replace the saying that I want with the saying that I need, because you hear enough things on television that people are indulging in things that they have no business.
It's good advice, and it's what we saw in our video tonight about the good consumer, where the commercial culture tries to indoctrinate you into wanting things you want rather than that you need. But even with the values that you're espousing here, did you say the credit card companies are after you?
I mean, I get like 8 credit card offers
a year right.
And
So
I only need one.
Your credit is good and your finances are stable, it sounds like. Good advice.
Yeah, very good advice. It's a great way to think about it. And for a lot of people, you really have to be very strategic about what it is you're spending money on and how it is you go and save up. Some, for example, credit unions have those old Christmas accounts. You remember that? Where you save up and then you get the money at the end.
They used to call them Christmas clubs.
Christmas
you would just
clubs.
Put in $5 a week to save up for your Christmas gifts.
It's the old-fashioned way to save up, which was you'd save up. We're seeing
a lot of... They don't have
of
credit default swaps that do that, do they?
We're also starting to see a lot of layaway options in retailers around the city now, as people are starting to take advice like our callers and be responsible with making sure they can afford something before they buy it.
Monique, you're on the air. Hello, Monique.
Yes, thank you. What I would like to say is that 10 years ago, I made a late payment to a credit company. And since then, they created a line called ATM to which they are charging 22.99% APR, although I never own an ATM card from them. And lately they've been acquired by another company, credit company, so they changed that line. They called it cash advance, which I never receive any cash advance from them, but they want to continue this line, and every time the amount goes down, they keep increasing it. So it means that the balance at that time...
So they're giving you credit for these very high interest cash withdrawals that you're not using, I mean cash advances, that you're not using, but that they're trying to entice you to use. Is that it?
No, they're charging me for it. I don't need any cash advance. I never had any cash advance. They just put it in my bill every
So
month.
what are they charging you for? Other borrowing that you've done?
No, I never borrowed from them. The only way I became a part of this company was because I had a transfer from another account.
Right, I see.
But the problem is they created that ATM line, which never existed before I had that late payment.
Commissioner, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think I understand. I mean, you know, here's some general advice that I would urge for the caller and for others. If you don't understand something that you're being charged for, pick up the phone and call and make sure that they explain it to you. And if they don't, cancel the account if you can get access to your needs by somebody else, or call somebody like the Department of Consumer Affairs and let one of our mediators help you out. This is important for two reasons. Number one, people need to feel able to make the call to start negotiating. If the rate is too high, give them a call and see whether the rate can be lower. If they're charging you for a product you didn't want, give them a call and tell them to drop
You can negotiate with a credit card company.
You can negotiate with a credit card company. They want your business, as we've heard.
Here's one for you, Kathy, referenced in the Daily News today, a call that you actually took on the Spanish language line that the city has set up for this, along with CUNY and the Daily News, and we'll give these phone numbers at the end of our segment. But this was from somebody who worked at what they called informal jobs. This might be off-the-books jobs for illegal immigrants who were paying into the system, paying all their taxes, but couldn't find that they were eligible for unemployment when they got laid off. Aren't legal immigrants eligible for unemployment?
Well, I think the big question is whether or not you're working on the books or off the books. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't recognize or realize is that for the most part, and for a lot of low-wage jobs, working off the books is actually to your disadvantage for a variety of reasons. Number one, it means your employer, there's really no record of your employment with that employer. The employer's not paying into unemployment insurance, so if you lose your job, you're not entitled to unemployment benefits. And you're possibly not, and you're also not being recognized as and being able to get pay stubs that would allow you to perhaps even qualify for and apply for the earned income tax credit.
So that's if you're working off the books. What if you are a legal immigrant who's working on the books, paying into the system, by virtue of not being a citizen yet? Do you lose your right to collect unemployment?
No. If you're paying into unemployment insurance, you're eligible for unemployment insurance. It's really the question of whether or not they're off the books or on the books.
All right. Sue in Crown Heights, you're on the air. Hello, Sue.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
My question is this. I have numerous credit cards, and I'm trying to pay them off. So if I contact the credit card company to negotiate to either to reduce the interest rate or to pay it off, how would that affect my credit score? Does it show up as a charge-off on your credit report? And how long does it stay on your credit report?
Commissioner, do you know?
Yeah, I don't think you're describing a charge-off. You should go for it. If they renegotiate your interest rate, it's only good news. Do it.
All right. There you go. Do it. Go for it.
Do it.
Mortgage question, again, from today's Daily News. I've made a down payment on a 2-bedroom condo, but would like instead to buy a 3-bedroom unit in the same building. I'm thinking about saving for retirement too. Can I afford the bigger apartment? How do you make that balance? How do you calculate that balance?
Well, and that's a perfect case in which there's a couple things there that I think the call takers really try to engage the caller in a conversation about. Number one, there's the question about if you want to sort of upgrade to apartments now or houses, a lot of prices are coming down in terms of home ownership. So it might be a good time to be thinking about buying and moving to the next step.
As long as you're confident that
you
they're
can
not going to
sell.
go down and down and down.
Yes, and right, as long as you're confident that the value's not going to go down, if you plan on being in that place for 7 years or more, you know, this may be a time, you know, you might be wanting to watch the next several months and see where the prices go, and they might still be going down. But if you're really talking about an investment that you're going to be somewhere for a while, it may make some sense. You have to think about if you own an apartment already, you have to think about how you're going to resell that, and given the fact that your price may actually go down, you might want to start on that pathway first. The other thing is just thinking about how stable your current employment is, and a lot of us are, you know, a lot of people are are wondering about that as well. So you just also have to think about how much you can afford to take the risk for some higher payments right now.
Let's get one more in here. Raul, you're on the air. Raul, hello.
Hi, great. Yeah, I have a quick question. I'm an artist who does sometimes these issues on consumerism, and I've collected these ads, you know, where they send the credit card offers all the time, and they have these envelopes, and I've been collecting them for about maybe 7 or 8 years now. And I want to send heavy objects in them and return them to the senders to really make some sort of point about how they send all these objects and they're encouraging, or send all this paper through the mail, and they're encouraging us to just continue to consume.
I'd recommend a shoe. Put a shoe in one of those boxes.
Is there any liability I'm taking on for that?
Commissioner?
Well, you know, assuming that you're putting nothing scarier than a shoe in those envelopes, you know, I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. I think people make their statements in their own way.
But he's not taking on liability that I don't know what that would mean. Maybe just a charge. Or
I think if it's an empty
envelope,
I think he's, you know, if he's not returning the form itself, I think he's okay.
All right. Okay. We are running out of time here. You have the hotline going in conjunction with the City Consumer Affairs Department,
right,
and the Daily News and CUNY through Friday. Give us that phone number.
212-330-6505. That's in English. And if you want to call in Spanish, it's 212-330-6506.
330-6505
in English and 6506 in Spanish. If you forget, you can call 311. And after this week, you can still access the services of the city's financial education network by calling 311 or going to our website at Consumer Affairs.
That's the next thing I was going to ask you. Why only through Friday? Obviously, you've demonstrated an overwhelming need for this in this one-week project, just with the calls you've gotten in these first 3 days.
Yeah, in these first 3 days, we've already gotten almost 6,000 calls, so there's a huge need. And the good news, I think, is that this partnership and this phone-a-thon is really priming the pump, letting people know that there is help out there. It's free or very, very low-cost help. They can get it through the city, and they should keep calling.
And last question, real quick. What have you learned? This is almost a natural experiment. When you let people call in, maybe they're not asking the questions you thought they would answer. Have you discovered any trends or particular patterns of problems out there?
I think we've been incredibly surprised at how on point the calls are. I think when we first started conceiving this, we were thinking people might be calling in with, you know, any range of questions. There's incredible relevancy to all of the questions. People are just in an incredible range of needs. So
and in this recession, we will keep trying to be of service to you on this program week after week. So keep tuning in for that, and we will try to help you not feel isolated, give you concrete information right here week after week. Thanks, both of you, for your service.
Thanks,
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Brian.
much. Coming up, a park for FDR and what Barack Obama could learn from him about putting people back to work. It's Brian Lehrer Live, back in a minute.
Hey, Sarah.
Oh my gosh, he's so cute. How do you know him?
Come on, Donovan, do it like I taught you. Love the new tattoo, Sarah. Let's go!
Dude, that's Sarah. The girl in the pink shirt. That's the girl I was telling you about.
Oh, that's Sarah?
Theater 2 on your left. Hey, Sarah. What color underwear today?
Hey, Sarah. So when are you going to post something new?
Anything you post online, anyone can see. Family, friends.
See you later, Sarah.
Even not so friendly people. Think before you post.
Ma, guess what? I went back to college. No, I didn't quit my job. I'm finishing my degree with a CUNY Online Bachelor's in Business. I interact online with real City University of New York faculty on a schedule that fits my busy life. Ma, you should look who's teaching at CUNY. And it all leads to a high-quality Bachelor of Science degree in business. I can attend class anywhere, anytime. Yes, Mom, even at your house Friday night for dinner.
The CUNY Online Baccalaureate. Get back to business.
It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Did you know that half the infrastructure in this country was built in the days of President Franklin Roosevelt? Well, it's high time for some rebuilding, and we sure could use the jobs, right? What did FDR's job programs look like back in the day, back in the 30s? And today, might one construction project be that long-planned memorial to FDR on, of course, Roosevelt Island? With us, William Vanden Heuvel. He is founder of the Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Institute and the driving force behind the Four Freedoms Park, which we'll describe. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brian.
Did you know the Roosevelts?
I knew Mrs. Roosevelt quite well. I only saw President Roosevelt from afar when, as a small boy in Rochester, New York, I was on my father's shoulders during a torchlight parade, and the president was in Rochester campaigning. But I went to his funeral and hitchhiked to there as a schoolboy.
Hitchhiked.
And then in later life, when I was active in political life in New York, I knew Mrs. Roosevelt quite well.
This must be surreal to you. Did you ever think you would see this come around again in your lifetime?
No, it is surreal. And the things are, obviously there's many things that are different, but the banking crisis, the systemic collapse, the growing unemployment, the concern about foreclosures in homes, all of those things were what Franklin Roosevelt had to confront. And in a country that had never been used to the government interfering and coming to the rescue of people. That wasn't the government's role. Franklin Roosevelt said it was, that the government serves its people. And of course, then we had unemployment of 25%, which is a staggering number. Today we have unemployment of 7% and anticipate that it will go to 9 or perhaps 10.
And I wonder what the 25% from those days counts, because we know that the 7% today, or 8%, doesn't count all these Americans who are so discouraged that they're not actively seeking work anymore. Yeah. So the real unemployment rate today, I think it's fair to say, is something more like 12%. What did 25% mean back then?
Probably 40. I mean, and also the unemployed then were the sole wage earner, the sole breadwinner in families. Today you have perhaps two in a family, so one could be working and one isn't working. Also, you had something different for senior citizens. You had nothing in place to help them. They were the most impoverished group in the country. They relied on their children, they couldn't get jobs, and many were put in what were called poorhouses. I remember them as a boy in Rochester, New York. Today you have Social Security, you have unemployment insurance, you have programs that Franklin Roosevelt developed through the New Deal that gives us a network that saves a lot of people from catastrophe.
So when we see what the Bush administration is doing right now and what the Obama administration to be is planning, do you think they're learning their lessons well from what worked under Roosevelt and maybe even what didn't?
I have no doubt that all of the Obama transition team are reading Arthur Schlesinger, or reading Doris Kearns,
another historian,
and reading the books of the first 100 days of the Roosevelt era, which was the most productive and effective legislative period in American history, and they're watching the battles that Roosevelt had to fight and preparing for them, because those battles will come. But you do have, as you say, today the federal government is pouring money into a system to save it. That wasn't the case then. When Roosevelt came, the banks had collapsed. There were thousands of banks that were closing throughout the country. He declared a bank holiday, closed the banks for 5 days. And that moratorium...
That was wrong?
No, that was right. It saved the banking system. Roosevelt generally is credited with saving the free enterprise system. As you can see, I read the other day, someone said, capitalism is wonderful going up, but it's socialism coming down because they're pouring so much money into the system trying to save it.
What did Roosevelt do that didn't work? Because there were peaks and valleys, even in the Depression. Between 1933 and World War II, things started getting better, things fell back.
Well, the NRA program, which was an effort to bring the business community together with the laboring community and many other communities to work out price programs, etc., did not work. In 1937, when they tried to cut federal spending, that didn't work and threatened another depression. So I think one of the things you have to be very careful of now is not to be afraid to spend too much. It's spending too little. But you mentioned the infrastructure program. Half of America is the America that was built by Franklin Roosevelt in the New Deal. In New York, I was reading today, Hunter College at 68th and Park Avenue, built during the New Deal by the WPA. The Triborough Bridge, LaGuardia Airport, the roads, the swimming pools in the city. 11 of the most beautiful swimming pools in this city were built during the New Deal era.
FDR and Robert Moses.
Well, FDR and Robert, not friends, but cooperated to make good things happen.
All right, the Four Freedoms Park on Roosevelt Island.
Right.
Tell us about it.
Roosevelt Island was called Welfare Island until 1973. Nelson Rockefeller governor, John Lindsay as mayor. The New York Times, all of the newspapers in the city demanded that there should be some more memorial to the greatest president of the 20th century, who was a New Yorker. Governor of the state of New York, lived in New York City, lived in Hyde Park. And so Nelson Rockefeller renamed it Roosevelt Island. And they retained the services of the late great architect Louis Kahn to design it. It was the last work of Kahn's life. It's a magnificent park. The Four Freedoms was a speech that Roosevelt gave in January 41 when he was answering the question, what is this war going to bring us, that Second World War? And he said, we have to dedicate ourselves to the four freedoms: freedom of speech and expression, freedom of religion, freedom from want, freedom from fear. So when this great memorial park, which is a beautiful site, and great open space, and one of the most beautiful places in New York, is finally built, and we expect to begin construction next year.
We have some slides.
It'll be forever a tribute to that concept. Roosevelt himself was not interested in memorials to himself. But I think this is for us, not for him.
Take a look. We have a web view up here. What are we looking at?
We are looking at the 4 acres at the southern tip of the island is the Louis Kahn design. That's the way it will look when, in fact, it's built. It ends in a beautiful memorial room. It looks out over the United Nations. There's a very good scene of it. And I think what Kahn tried to do was combine nature and sunlight, and to give hope and to give a sense of strength. It looks at the United Nations that Roosevelt was the founder of. It looks out to the great harbor of New York. It looks to the world that Roosevelt helped create.
Why hasn't it been built if it was conceived?
Rockefeller became vice president in 44.
In 74.
74. The city went bankrupt in 75. Louis Kahn died in 74, right after finishing this work. And so through the years, there's been many efforts to do this, and then frequently it's confronted financial crises. Not as though we're not facing that now.
Yeah, but you're trying to raise money
but we
for
have
it
a
right
wonder.
now?
Yeah, Governor Patterson has been extraordinarily helpful and supportive. Mayor Bloomberg and the group in City Hall has been most encouraging. We've raised a good amount of money in the private sector, and one of the things we hope to do is to say to President Obama, the first project on the infrastructure program that you are going to introduce to the nation should be this one, as a symbol of what America can do to help and build itself.
A park counts as infrastructure?
Yeah, well, it's a public place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of the great parks in America were built during the New Deal, and I think that's what this will do too.
Let's take a look at another artist's rendering. What are we looking at here?
We're looking at the entrance to the Memorial Park. We see the United Nations in the background. It'll be a place, I think, that will be wonderful for the residents of Rose Hill Island. And it will also be a tourist attraction. It will bring people travel all over the world to see the work of Louis Kahn. You had something on Bangladesh earlier on one of your videos.
The brick man from
one of the
Bangladesh.
most beautiful buildings in the world. It's the capital of Bangladesh that Louis Kahn built.
Is that how they transported the bricks on
Probably,
people's heads?
and we
like
may do it here the same way.
On that video, one more sketch.
Well, there's another, the wonderful green. You see the 2 alleys of trees that will be linden trees, 150 trees, and then you have a beautiful public park space that will be used by all kinds of people. You know, the fireworks on July 4th are quite visible, wonderfully visible from Roosevelt. They still will be that way. And then right above it is going to be 11 acres that the Trust for Public Land has as garden, open space. Be one of the most beautiful open spaces in New York.
And as a tribute to FDR, how fitting would it be if this became one of the first infrastructure projects in the public works program from Barack Obama?
Franklin Roosevelt's name is on the front page of every paper almost every day. I know President-elect Obama is a great admirer and knows what Franklin Roosevelt represented. Freedom from fear, to give us the courage that we're going to need to go through the tough days that are ahead of us. This will be a reminder of all of that. And I think the message and the words of Franklin Roosevelt will be an encouragement for all of us.
Nobody really knows what to do right now, but they're trying everything.
Well, that's what he said to do. Nobody knows the answers to a lot of these questions, but you've got to keep trying to find a way that resolves the problem. And in trying, you'll find the way to find it. And that's what he did.
Bold experimentation was FDR's phrase, right? William Van Den Heuvel, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
In America, countless African-American dads are devoted to their kids and families. Still, 65% of black households are led by single parents, mostly moms. The problem was underlined during the presidential campaign when Barack Obama said too many dads were acting like boys instead of men, his words. And lately, we've seen the issue reflected in film and video from a group called the Black Masculinity Project. To launch our conversation about that, let's watch a clip from director Byron Hurt's short film, Barack and Curtis, Manhood, Power, and Respect.
Barack Obama is exploding the very facile and simple notions we have of what it means to be a black man in this society, whose intellect is one of the foremost things that you will notice about him, who is the antithesis of the angry, out-of-control Negro. When we look at someone like 50 Cent and we read the background, you know, someone born into a drug-connected family, fatherlessness, loss of his mother at a young age, being involved in the drug racket himself, we don't anticipate that being someone who can figure out a way to maneuver through the corporate machinations of the music industry and then take that into advertising, brand marketing, and all the things that he's done. And so it's almost a kind of underdog vitality that you see in both of them, because neither of them by any reasonable stretch is supposed to be in the position that they're in now.
Barack Obama has what Duke Ellington has, this elegance that almost in a ninja type way avoids ugliness with style. When he puts his hand in his pockets and rolls up his sleeves, he still looks fresh. He looks like he has on a crisp shirt every time. His athleticism is important, and it makes you feel like he's fit and ready. There are so many black men that get up and put on a tie and go to work, and then on Saturday or at the club, they're more like 50. We're not allowed to be seen as people who can possibly have baggy jeans and a Hugo Boss suit in the same closet.
With us now to discuss Black fatherhood in the age of Obama, two filmmakers working with the Black Masculinity Project. Byron Hurt directed what we just saw, Barack and Curtis, Manhood, Power, and Respect. And Angela Tucker, a prolific documentary filmmaker who also writes for the Huffington Post. We'll see some of her work later. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Byron, want to talk about that clip and
Sure.
why 50 Cent?
Well, you know, I could have chosen any number of rappers, but I chose 50 Cent basically because of what he personifies in rap music and hip-hop culture. I mean, he personifies hypermasculinity, the bravado, the constant references to how much money he has and how many women he has in his music, and his ability to instill fear in people through his music. And so I thought that he would be like a really interesting contrast to Barack Obama, who had been emerging at the time that I thought about making this film as the Democratic nominee.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Angela, how did you get involved with the Black Masculinity Project, and give us the big picture?
Well, they put out a call looking for pieces, and the question was, what does it mean to be sort of a black man in America? And I was really interested in creating pieces about the homeless community in New York. And I have a friend who does outreach with an organization called Common Ground, and we work together to find two people to make sketches, to have them tell their stories for themselves. So that was...
There you go. Is the Obama path now something that's launching discussions in the community? Is there sort of, 50 Cent versus Barack Obama? What kind of man should I be?
Well, I mean, I think there's no question that, Barack Obama is inspiring a lot of people, male and female, across race and across class and that sort of thing. I've seen this kind of conversation take place, the impact that Barack Obama is going to have on young men of color, young men from the hip-hop generation and that sort of thing. But I think time is going to tell the kind of impact that he's really going to have, beyond just, the symbolic kind of impact and the symbolic influence that he has. I think what he does in office, I think, is going to have a lot to do with how people, change or shift their lifestyle, around, his own persona. But I think it's a positive thing, no doubt. I'm just not certain that he's gonna change things, among young black men overnight.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now let's watch another clip from Byron Hurt's film, Barack and Curtis. This clip is about the focus on a single type of manhood.
Barack equaled Harvard. Someone like 50 Cent equaled Hood. Hood equaled virility, Harvard equaled impotence. And it made me think about the way manhood had evolved in terms of blackness over a period of time and how dangerous it had become. Gangster rap had begun to shape the definition of black manhood to the degree that it made, certainly I think, middle-class men lose their place in manhood in the eyes of women. Not in a real sense, but in terms of the media image. Because everywhere you went, the image of manhood in every form of creative media came out of that 50 Cent mold. If it wasn't thugged out, then it wasn't manhood. And for too many of young boys, both here in the US and certainly in London, there aren't those male figures, so then all they have to define manhood is what comes out of the small screen or what comes out of a magazine or what comes out of a hip-hop video. The beauty of the presence and the emergence of Barack Obama isn't Barack Obama, it's Michelle Obama. Because in Michelle, for black women, there was an affirmation of their strength could still find them a great guy.
That was powerful, how she switched up from Barack to Michelle.
Yeah, I always respond to that part in the video. Like, yes, Michelle, it's about Michelle. She gets it.
What does Michelle mean in this conversation?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that Michelle is just such a powerful figure, and their marriage is just a really strong, they're a partnership. And I think it's important for people to see a partnership like that between a strong black man and a strong black woman.
So are there implications in this conversation for black femininity as well as masculinity?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things I really like about the piece is that Byron touches upon by bringing up Michelle Obama. It's not just a conversation about Barack by himself, but Barack as the family man and Barack in his relationship with, a strong woman. Yeah,
and I think for men, I think it sends a real powerful message that it's cool to be with a strong, powerful woman. It makes him really seem very comfortable about his own sense of manhood and secure in his masculinity. And I think that's a real positive message to send to men, not just black men, but to men.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So let's see another clip from Barack and Curtis about Barack Obama's image.
in our community, in the black community, masculinity is associated with how many women you have, how many kids you have, how many times you've been in and out of prison, how much weight have you sold. And there's always a negative connotation when it relates to masculinity. There's nothing positive. A lot of my friends, you know, who are same-gender loving, they first and foremost say, well, Barack Obama doesn't speak for me, regardless of him being a man or, you know, a black man, because they don't feel that he knows the experience of that of being same-gender loving. But my concern and question was, well, he's first and foremost a black man in America, and that is what you are. So when people see you, they don't see gay, they see a black man.
Does it matter that Obama's experience is so atypical? He didn't come from the corner on, you know, in Bed-Stuy or South Side Chicago. Yeah. He's Kenyan and Kansan and Hawaiian. Does that make him less relatable as a role model to people in, you know, to people on the corner of Lenox Avenue?
I don't know if it makes him less relatable. I just think that I think people should understand that it's not as simple, you know, as Barack Obama made it appear to be. You know, I think that there are some real obstacles out there for young, you know, men of color who have real problems and real issues that they're dealing with, especially in terms of class and access, and you know, having, you know, certain opportunities, you know, denied or not presented, you know, to them. So not everybody has the same kind of access that Barack Obama had. That being said, though, I think that, you know, he was able to do a whole lot with with little. You know what I mean, Barack Obama, and I think that's the real motivating factor behind, you know, his enormous movement that he was able to organize and then, you know, ultimately claim power.
I'm glad you raised the question of the opportunity that many people don't have.
Right.
Because the movement, as you guys are framing it, seems to be very much about personal responsibility and doesn't ask much of white society and doesn't reference much the history of slavery and discrimination that are really at the root of the problems today still.
Well, I mean, I think that you always have to contextualize everything from that place. I mean, from the legacy and the history of slavery and Jim Crow and other legalized systems of racism, you know what I mean? So, you know, I tried to do it a little bit in the piece, but the piece could only be 10 minutes long. So, you know, I wish I had much more time to really explore that particular aspect that you just mentioned, because I think it's really, really important. I think that we should never really forget that this you know, what the film really says is that this space, these are two men who were able to succeed in a system that was not designed for them.
Yeah.
And that's the overarching point. And that while you have Barack Obama on one end and you have 50 Cent on the other end, there's this range of black men, you know, in between the two, you know, who are living, breathing, walking around in our communities, you know, who are just really trying to be men.
Now let's see a clip from one of Angela's films called Invisible Man.
I grew up without boundaries. I grew up in orphanages. I lived, as a teenager, I lived in St. John's Boys Home in Rockaway Park. You saw pictures in the old days of the food lines and the bread lines and stuff. You know, that's kind of how it looked, but even more, you know, prison-like. You know, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of bad energy, a lot of fighting. A friend of mine called it the crab basket theory. That, you know, crabs, if you have them all in a basket, and one starts to try to climb out, the other crabs will pull him down and keep him from climbing out. You know, and that's what we do.
Ooh, get them off me. Do you really think people are dragging each other down on purpose like that?
Well, I think it's really Andrew's belief about, you know, human nature. And it was important for me when I did the interviews with him. I did an audio interview with him first, and he just talked about that was his feeling about society, and I wanted to be true to that and use images that evoked what he was talking about.
What about the recession as something that's going to work against the movement that you two are in? Because we know that masculinity is so tied up with economics historically. If somebody doesn't feel he can be a good provider, it, you know, it promotes leaving the home. It promotes not hanging around once the children are conceived. And now we're going to be in tough times again. Do you have to work at that level too?
Well, I mean, you know, in terms of the two men that I worked with, they were men who, you know, they had had jobs, they had been out there, and they just weren't able to make it work for a variety of different reasons. And the streets were really the only option for them. And, you know, they found a way to pull themselves out of it, and now both, you know, live on their own in their own apartments. And, you know, it was important for me to try to tell their stories and to, you know, touch upon the things that they were dealing with. And they found a way to pull themselves out, and I wanted to sort of show that and spotlight that in my pieces. So,
do you feel like the Black Masculinity Project is a relatively, you know, alternative thing with an uphill battle against the dominant messages from MTV and BET and everything?
Well, I think it's part of a larger movement, you know, that many people have been a part of, or that are a part of, that are questioning and re-examining gender, you know, and I think it's part of, you know, what's been going on for, you know, the last 10, 15 years, you know, with people who are dealing with around black masculinity. But to answer your question that you raised to Angela a second ago, I work really, really hard to try and get men to think critically about manhood and masculinity and what it means to be a man, right? And part of that is sort of detaching manhood from how much money you have, you know, or that idea of being the provider. Because in moments and in times like this, where you're facing an economic crisis, where you may lose your job or you don't have the same kind of social status or economic power that may define your masculinity, then what does that say about your manhood, your masculinity, right? And so I think we have to think of our manhood and our masculinity as being about much, much more than how much money we have, you know, what kind of clothes we wear, what kind of cars we drive.
Food for
and that
thought
sort of thing, yeah.
for all men. Thank
Absolutely.
you very much.
Thank
Angela,
you.
thanks, Byron. Thank you very much. And finally tonight, that flying shoe attack that President Bush had to endure in Iraq this week has inspired some fine web graphics. Boing Boing, the Internet Directory of Wonderful Things, has collected some. Let's take a look. Scrolling down here, the first few would work well as video games. Recognize the World of Warcraft, Pokemon, and Duck Hunt references, if you know those games. A little Austin Powers next, Mortal Kombat, and The Matrix, and Monty Python with the Bigfoot. And of course, the Three Stooges at the end. Nice work. Whether you enjoyed our program or not, thanks for keeping your shoes on. We're here live on Wednesday nights at 7:30 or anytime at brianlehrer.tv. And please tune in for my daily radio show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC Radio. Tomorrow morning, an MTA board member breaks the bad news about service cuts and fare hikes. That's at 10 o'clock on AM 820 and 93.9 FM. Have a great night.